Welcome back to Killer Fun, where we explore the intersection of crime and entertainment every other week. I'm Christy.
I'm Jackie.
And we're so glad that you're back with us today. Today, we are talking about Killing Eve.
I had not seen this show, and I had really wanted to see this show, and then it got stacked behind like a bunch of other things. I am so glad I have started watching this show.
It's so good, right?
It's everything I love. How did I miss it for this long?
I don't know, but oh my gosh, assassins and the government officials who love them.
Oh, yes.
I mean,
Every time they were like, oh, that's impressive. I mean, awful. And I was like, oh, that's me.
she's so funny. Eve is so funny and relatable, and I can't relate to Villanelle at all. And she's murderous and horrible, but I kind of love her.
I kind of love her. I don't relate. I'm sure we'll get into it. I don't relate, but there is one aspect that I sort of relate to her in. But I'm sure we'll talk about it. I'm sure we'll get there.
We'll get there. And if we don't, you'll bring it up and then we'll talk about it.
That's very true.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about who's in it.
Yes.
Real quick. So Jodie Comer is Villanelle. The only thing on her IMDb that I recognized her from, other than this, was that she was Rey's mother in Rise of Skywalker.
Right, which is such a random thing. But you know what? She actually kind of does look like Rey a little bit.
Yes, exactly.
You know?
And I was like, oh, that totally makes sense.
Yeah,
totally makes sense. She's got that kind of ageless face too, like where she could be super young, but she might be older and it's difficult to tell, but she's like gorgeous.
She is gorgeous. And she says it herself in the first episode.
Oh,
when
yes.
She looks in the mirror and does all of the stuff.
You think she's being critical.
Yeah.
And she's not
critical.
Like,
she says, oh, it's beautiful.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
I was like, oh, you had me until the last second. You're not wrong, but I thought we were more alike, and now we're not.
No. You don't want to be more like Villanelle, I don't think.
No, but I do love her name.
Well, yes. I mean, obviously, it's not really her name. We'll get to that.
Obviously.
We won't spoil that, but we'll get there.
But it's a beautiful name, and I love it.
Yeah. Then there's Sandra Oh as Eve Pilastri. She is best known as Dr. Christina Yang in Grey's Anatomy. Of course, everybody's seen her there. So, yes. Yeah. And she's also lovely. I love how, great. She's a fantastic actress and stunningly beautiful in a very non-traditional sort of way, which is so fun because Villanelle is sort of like very traditionally beautiful. Blonde, tall, white, thin, and then we have Sandra Oh, who's just as gorgeous, but she's a little bit older and a smaller person and an ethnic person. And I mean, which is great. I'm so glad to see that incorporated, and they don't mention it at all. It's just there.
No, it's just there. And there's several other characters also. I mean, there's women abound as leads in this whole series, and all of them are absolutely gorgeous. And I just think it's great.
Yes. Speaking of women, Fiona Shaw is Carolyn Martins. She is a staple of British entertainment. If you've watched any British entertainment, crime, not crime, she's all over it and has been for many, many years. Probably American audiences will recognize her most from being Aunt Petunia in the Harry Potter series. And she's perfectly cast.
Yeah.
She does
I love this character.
Job.
This character, she just has this confidence and this, it's a different kind of demureness. If I were to describe myself, I would not describe myself as demure. In fact, I probably, if I had to rank characteristics that I love, it's not really on the list. I don't have an affinity for demureness. I just don't know what it is. But Miss Martin's. That is actually a type of demureness, I think. And I love it. So it's like that kind of demure I want to be, like 100%. But like the other kind of more traditional ideal of demure, not me, don't want to be it.
So I think maybe she's not demure. I think she's just reserved and private. And
yeah, maybe.
I think that's really at the heart of it, is that she's careful with whom she allows in.
Yeah, I guess that's how I see demureness, though.
I think when you think of demure, you think of like somebody who's submissive and sweet. And she's not demure, she's reserved.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't think I ever thought of demure as being submissive.
Oh, really?
No.
Okay.
So that's interesting. Yeah. Interesting.
That's something to think on.
Well, now I'm going to have to go do like a deep dive into the definitions and etiology of demure.
Excellent.
Because if you're a nerd like me, that's what you do.
This is why we make a podcast, let's be honest, because you wouldn't believe the number of deep dives I've been in.
It's true. It's true.
There's a whole portion of this first episode that's about bridge. Mm-hmm. And I did a bunch of research on bridge. And I took it all out because I realized this is boring. But it was fascinating when I was...
Now, don't tell my dad that. He loves bridge. And he's really good.
What? I played online for like an hour.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, yes, because it was fun.
It is actually kind of fun.
It is. It's kind of fun, but it's kind of boring to talk about.
Well, yeah, that is... That's true. I have to give you that. But you know what? You and I, we would make good bridge partners, I think.
We would make awesome bridge partners.
Yeah, that would be excellent.
Yeah, we could cheat at bridge, like the article that I found. There's a whole article about cheating in professional bridge, and it was fabulous and so interesting. And it'll be on our social media, so I'm not going to talk about it other than what I've already mentioned. But if you want to find that article, I will post it on Facebook, Killer Fun Podcast, exploring the intersection of crime and entertainment, and on Twitter at Killer Fun Pod. And you can always send me an email, killerfunpodcast@gmail.com. And if you don't want to go on the socials, I can send you a link that way. So there we go.
There we go. Bridge.
All right. Then we have Kim Bodnia, who plays Constantine. And he's actually from Denmark. And this is his most widely known English-speaking part.
Cool. Yeah, he didn't look familiar to me, really.
No, me either. Like, a little bit. He might have been in, like, one other show that I've seen that was, like, a foreign, maybe subtitled show.
Oh, okay.
But I don't remember. Like, he looked a little bit familiar, but it wasn't like, oh, I've seen that guy in a bunch of stuff. Like, when you see Fiona Shaw, you're like, oh, she's been in everything. I can't name any of it, but what has she been in?
Right. Yeah. Like, I've seen her. Yeah. I'm familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. Then Owen McDaniel is Nico Pilastri. And he's Irish, not Polish. He works primarily in British television and British and Irish stage productions. So that's pretty cool. And then the only other person that I wanted to mention real quick is Kirby Howell-Baptiste, and she plays Elena.
Yes.
And the assistant, and she was Simone on The Good Place.
Yes, because as soon as I heard her speak, it was her voice. I mean, she looked, I guess she probably did look a little familiar, but, you know, I was just kind of watching the show and enjoying the interaction. But her voice kept, like, peeking at me, and I was like... I know that voice, that cadence. Like, there's something about that. So I had to go look it up. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep. There we go. All right. So I really think I can recap these first two episodes.
Okay.
In less than 5 minutes. I can do it.
Okay. All right. Let's do it. Let's do it.
I can do it. So it's a recap of Nice Face, and I'll deal with him later. All right. So Villanelle, whose name we don't know, and she's a brunette rather than a blonde, as she is mostly, has to practice her behavior for it to seem natural. And this is a clue that she's a psychopath. We learn that she's also antisocial when she dumps ice cream into a little girl's lap.
And enjoys every second.
And it enjoys every second of it. Then we see another woman sleeping in a bed. We don't know her name, but we will learn shortly that she is Eve, and she's screaming terrifyingly. What could be a grisly start to the show turns out to be darkly hilarious because she just slept on both her arms. They're asleep. They're not functioning. And it's darkly, wickedly, fantastically comedic. I love it so much. Eve, we quickly learn, is very, very fun. She's very, very smart. And she's deeply unfulfilled by her boring job with the MI5. Cool spy stuff happens, and she's there to do logistics. Poor Eve.
Poor Eve.
All right, so there's been a murder of a high-level Russian mobster, and Eve and her coworkers are tasked with finding a place to stay and protection for the only witness. Again, logistics, not investigation. Eve has some insight into the assassin, and it's noticed by Carolyn, who's the head of the Russia desk at MI6, and that's dismissed by her superiors at MI5. They're not interested in hearing about it at all. So we understand that Villanelle is the assassin of this Russian, and we see her playfully dark side and how she does her job from the moment she receives her assignment all the way through to her bold and fearless executions.
Nice word.
Thank you very much. Eve does her actual job to protect the witness, but also is very slyly investigating this assassin whom she believes to be a woman. All her plans and efforts to keep the witness safe go awry. Eve and her supervisor Bill take the fall, and they're both fired. Carolyn is impressed with Eve's investigation, even if she couldn't say so in a professional capacity. So she taps Eve to continue her investigation off the record. Eve gets a new coworker, brings in a couple of familiar faces, while Villanelle is suddenly finding herself not having the undying adoration of her employers that she once had. And her handler, Constantine, wants her to be assessed for mental fitness to continue her assassin work. They're afraid she's going to get caught, and she's going to give them up, which, I mean, for most people, that would be a fair concern. So Eve proves to the audience and her coworkers that she has Villanelle completely pegged, even if she doesn't yet know her name. At the very end of the episode, both Eve and Villanelle come to the very same conclusion. Eve meets it with excitement, and Villanelle meets it with concern, but also a bit of fascination. The two have met one another before.
Well done!
Thank you very much.
Slow clap. Yes.
Not too spoilery.
No, not too spoilery at all.
Just a little bit of spoilery. I mean, we'll get more spoilery later, but I mean, I've seen these first two episodes 3 times now. And,
oh my gosh, really?
Well, because I watched the whole series all by myself.
Oh, that's right.
Because I was just like, I want to check this out. I was like, I'll check this out for killer fun. And then I was like, this is fantastic. I want to keep watching it. And then we decided we were going to cover it.
And so you went back and
so I watched them again. And then I loved it so much the second time, I'm now forcing my son and my husband to watch with me. I'm like, it's so good. They don't find it as funny as I do. But
really? Oh, man. It is a comedy.
Well, it is.
It's actually a comedy.
Yeah, we'll get there. Just one moment. So it's based... The whole series is based on some self-published books by a man named Luke Jennings. Codename Villanelle is the first book in the series. And, so shout out to all the self-published authors out there who feel like they're never going to make it. This guy had it plucked from basic obscurity to be made into a really fantastic show.
That's so cool.
Yep.
Yeah, shout out to the indies out there. I mean, one of my favorite authors is an independent author. Mm-hmm. Really. And I mean, amazing, amazing people out there doing amazing things.
Yeah. So it really was the relationship between Villanelle and Eve that got this show made. So Sally Woodward Gentle is of Sid Gentle Films. She optioned Luke Jennings' first book, and she said that they were really particularly interested in the relationship between the women because, quoting, "It wasn't exploitative. We really enjoyed the character of Villanelle and the inventiveness of her kills, but we are particularly engaged with the mutual obsession of the women." Mm-hmm. Which I'm like, yes.
Which,
yeah,
it is novel. It really is. It's new. But it's not like the killer, catch-a-killer relationship is brand new. But it's definitely the first time you see it between a female officer of the law and a female criminal.
Yeah.
Right? And then on top of that, this is also the first time that you see where the officer of the law is admittedly sort of a true crime junkie.
Yeah.
As in, she really does kind of love it the way, well, we live it. And usually in the shows, they don't let the male ones do that. But women are kind of notoriously obsessed with true crime, which I don't know what that says about our society. I'm going to ignore that. But I feel like that actually allowing them to be female in the story allowed them to open up that door to the obsession the way that I actually think a male character would not have had the freedom to do. So
that's super fair. Yeah.
Pretty fun.
It was really well received by critics. Lucy Mangan from The Guardian. She said, "It's a snapping, crackling script, the perfect command of comedy and tragedy. The turns to and from each, the approach to every moment is just 10 degrees off center, and the characters are so fully developed that even the second stringers can pull off self-reflective jokes."
Nice.
I was like, that is spot on.
It is spot on.
Spot on. And then this is something that you were mentioning about the women. It wears its feminist credentials so lightly. Eve doesn't have to fight any overt sexism. Her boss and her husband are good, supportive guys. Villanelle only uses her femaleness to get physically close enough to slice, stab, or shoot her victims, not seduce them. And I was like, yes, she's not like sleeping with these guys to kill them.
Right. She's not like a Black Widow.
Right.
She's not a trope.
Right.
She's using her femaleness no more than a male would use his maleness in those situations where it was appropriate. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that Villanelle will use attractiveness wherever necessary, so it's not even beholden to some traditional, tropes either.
Right. Well, and it's not specifically towards men either.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm saying, is that she'll use it towards anyone.
Right. Yes. Anyone
so where necessary.
Right. Yeah. Which I kind of love. Mm-hmm. I kind of love how fluid it all is.
Yeah.
Sophie Gilbert said in an article in The Atlantic that Killing Eve is a signal of television to come, how it's moving. And she said it's tricky to categorize. It's variously a dark psychological drama about a sociopath, a feminist procedural, and a British workplace comedy. I was like, yup. That's exactly right.
But I think It's true, but it really is just a dark comedy. I just think that dark comedy is not something most people understand.
Right.
Because dark comedy has definitely an element, it's funny because it's true.
Yeah.
Therefore, silly doesn't quite work. You can't have silly dark comedy because you're going to make a joke that's not rooted in enough truth for it to be darkly funny. And so that's why it has to be a real drama, because you can't have the funny without the well-made drama underneath it. Mm-hmm. So, but I don't know if television's going this way. No, I gotta tell you.
Well, I don't know that she was so much saying that. She has this really good point that concepts that might once have been impossible to sell to networks or premium cable have proven their potential on other platforms, making outlandish and oddball pitches more appealing. Quirkier stories stand out.
Okay.
And I think it's not so much like making Killing Eve in several iterations. It's just saying that these quirkier stories, we're going to hear more of them.
Okay. I thought she was referring more to the fact that she sees black comedy, dark comedy, both of those terms have been used throughout the years, but I think dark comedy is more colloquial now. But I thought she was saying that she was going to see a trend. We were going to see a trend of dark comedies, and I don't think that's true.
No, I don't think so either. I think it's just quirkier stories. So Phoebe Waller-Bridge wrote the first season of this, and her show Fleabag on Prime it's a quirkier story, a little harder to deal with and get through. And because it's not a Friends level comedy. It's a little deeper than that, a little more raw and real. So anyway.
Yeah, makes sense.
And so in the UK, this is a BBC show. So in the UK, we call them seasons in the US, and they call them series. So
that's so confusing.
It's really confusing for Americans because what we call a series is the entirety of the show, and what they call a series is what we call a season.
So what do they call the whole show?
A show.
Oh, well,
I don't think they have a specific name for it. There's just like, it's Killing Eve. What else do you want me to call it? It's the show. Yeah. And they're like, and there's several series of it. And I'm like, no, the series is the whole show, and the season is the chapter. The 10 episode chapter of it. They don't agree with me.
I'm losing it because I think they're right. I think we've gotten it wrong.
Yeah, well.
That's pretty funny.
I just wanted to make sure we all understood the vernacular because this show is not over.
This show is not over.
3 seasons out currently. They were supposed to start filming season/series 4 last summer. And, we had COVID. But they're scheduled to start filming this summer. So they will be back. We will still get to see how Eve and Villanelle play out.
Good deal.
Yeah. All right. So when we come back, we're going to have Is It True? Psychology break and real life. So stick with us through this quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, I'm Jason. If you love Prince's music as much as I do, and you enjoy diving into lyrical content, I think I have a podcast for you. It's called the Press Rewind Prince Lyrics Podcast, and in this show, we take a trip back into Prince's discography, chronologically advancing through his catalog, with the goal of understanding the man's musical journey through his own words, his song lyrics. I often have guests on to join me in this discussion, and we have a lot of fun talking about Prince and his music, so hopefully you'll have as much fun listening to it. The Press Rewind Prince Lyrics Podcast is available wherever podcasts can be found. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for sticking with us through that little break. If you are new to the show, I'm going to explain what's about to happen because we have 3 sections where Christy has ruined her search history in order to find things to surprise me with. And so we're going to go through our sections about is it true, and psychology, and real life. And she has done a deep dive and come up with things to see how I react to it. So, all right. So, Christy, are you ready to surprise me?
I am. So,
all right.
The whole section, is it true? You don't know what I'm going to talk about.
Nope.
I try and pick up some of the big things that we do that you see in the show. And then I also try and pick out like little things that I'm like, what is that? These are the things that I would go look up after I watch a show. It'd be like, what is that about?
Yeah, like what's going on with that? Yes, and it's
and then
always
I tell
so fun.
you all about them.
You tell me all about them, and I'm actually quite impressed how many times we actually think the same. And you look up something I was curious about, but when you get something that I didn't think about it at all. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's either like, yes, I thought about that, or what? What is that? So it's always fun.
Yeah. I've got a few things that I'm going to go over quickly. 20 facts from Killing Eve that are nearly as good as the show itself, a BuzzFeed article. So, you know.
Okay.
You know. All right. So, do the British people run around calling each other Dick Swab? No.
Please say yes. Please say
no, they don't.
It's such a funny word.
It is a really funny word, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who, you know, developed the show for television, said it came about because more colorful language wasn't allowed on BBC, so they had to come up with a little more colorful terms, interesting terms, which I kind of like better.
I love them way better.
Oh, yes. I mean, because anybody can drop the F word.
Right.
And, you know, who thinks of Dick Swab? Hardly anybody.
Seriously.
Yeah, she said she thought really, really hard about what Bill and Eve would say to Frank when he fired them. And then the woman screaming in bed. So Eve is screaming in bed when she first starts, you know. And it was a very intentional scene by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, because so many of these crime shows open up with this woman in distress, screaming, terrified, and here it is. She turns it comedic. It's a little bit funny. It's a little bit silly.
Yep, it was great. It's a great scene.
Was super great, but it also gives us a little bit more insight into Eve than you realize, because what is she really screaming about? She's not screaming because she's a victim. She's screaming because of something funny, but she's also screaming because she lost control. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, an important insight into her character.
Yeah, there's an underlying sort of tone there.
Mm-hmm. Sandra Oh really was the only choice for the part of Eve. And initially, she was unavailable to play the part, but Phoebe Waller-Bridge kept after her and wrote long emails to Sandra Oh and her agent. So it was admiration for Phoebe Waller-Bridge and the script that really made her decide that she really needed to go ahead and do this show.
I'm so glad she did, because she is the perfect person to play that role.
Really, so much.
Yeah.
And Jodie Comer, who plays Villanelle, was very, very intimidated at the idea of having to speak multiple languages, because she does not actually speak all of the languages that she speaks in the show.
She doesn't at all, huh?
Not at all. In fact, she had somebody who speaks the language natively record it for her, and she would write it out phonetically. And in the scenes when they were in Italy, she had the Italian crew, because, you know, they use crew from wherever they are. You know, they'll have some of their own crew, but wherever a show is filming, they typically use, at least some of the people are from the area. Right. And she told them that she wanted them to tap her on the shoulder if she didn't get it right. If it didn't sound like Italian, she wanted them to tap her on the shoulder to get it right.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Because she pulled it off.
Oh, she pulls off Italian and Russian and French. I mean...
Yeah, like it's nobody's business. Like, it's so good.
You would think she is a native speaker. Mm-hmm. So Eve and Elena both attended a party and drank heavily the night before they're unexpectedly called into work on a Saturday to organize the safety of the witness to the Russian murder. Eve is really, really suffering, but Elena looks really like bright-eyed. And she says she took coal.
Yeah, so, okay. This does not sound like a hangover. And it was like a pill.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that a thing?
Not really. I found an article in Runner's World talking about it. Activated charcoal. Yeah.
I mean, I've seen that in toothpaste.
Yeah. It's basically the same thing, but in a capsule.
God.
It's not toothpaste, but it's like the activated charcoal stuff.
Right,
you know,
right.
They burn things super, super hot, makes it really highly porous. They do use it in emergency rooms for poisoning.
Oh,
That's
okay.
one of the things, like if you go in and you've swallowed poison, they'll have you swallow activated charcoal because it's porous and it'll
Start to
trap
absorb.
it. Yeah. It does actually absorb toxins in the body, but they did a study of activated charcoal with people who'd been drinking, and they found that even when they gave them the activated charcoal just 30 minutes after they drank, that it didn't really do anything. It didn't help. Didn't make them any less drunk. And because the activated charcoal only absorbs toxins that are still in the stomach. So once they're into your bloodstream...
Yeah, you're done.
Yeah, nothing.
So, as a hangover thing, then this is, like, useless.
I mean, really, it's placebo effect.
Placebo effect.
And,
Yeah.
and Elena is quite a bit younger than Eve. So...
Right.
And she
So there's
seems
that.
like she drinks more water. That's really key. If you don't want to get hungover, drink a bunch of water.
Yeah. She
Before
seems
you
like an
start drinking.
athlete. She had gotten
Yes.
up early. She'd gone for a run. Like,
Right.
She
Yes.
is, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, is it true? No.
No.
It's not a hangover cure. So the Russian who was murdered in Vienna died from a very small cut to the femoral artery, which is in the leg. Could somebody really die from that? Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. If your femoral artery is cut, yeah. Hell yeah. Now, my problem with this, though, is they made it seem like it happened and he didn't really know it initially.
I think he was drunk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because then there's that scene where Eve is trying to, like, well, I don't know. How hard is it to, like, puncture? And it's not easy. I mean, you're going to have a very, very sharp instrument to do that.
I don't think surgical grade instruments are a problem for Villanelle.
Oh, no. She's got them. she's got them for sure.
Yeah.
But, like, you're not going to take your rusty knife at your computer and be like, yeah, let me get through without causing a lot of ugly damage. Right?
Yeah.
So...
I don't know. I'm really not sure. I'm thinking how I imagined it is they stumble out of a bar restaurant, which they had done, basically, into the street.
Yeah.
It was fairly empty. They were both very, very inebriated. Villanelle did something to get close to them, cut him because he was so drunk he didn't realize it right away. He seemed like an older guy, too, so he might have just, if he felt some pain, sometimes people just ignore the pain.
It's true.
You bleed out in like 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's quick. I do think that if you had like anything less than like a actual surgical instrument, it would be far more painful.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas the surgical instrument can get in there and nick it before you, and because it's so clean, you don't even, you don't, this is why paper cuts, you don't notice it until you put Purell on your hands.
Yeah. Yes.
And then you're like, what has happened? Because with the paper cut, it's such a clean, small little cut, you don't really notice it. Or it's just, So, and then beyond that being drunk and older and stumbling out, I am sure, like, she just took one little boop.
Yep.
I
and who
believe it.
knows how close she was to him anyway. I don't know. I mean,
who knows?
I have all kinds of scenarios, and they don't show us that one. We don't see that murder. It's all in our imagination how that happened. And I can think of a dozen ways. I'm kind of glad they didn't show us that one because it's fun. I'm like Eve.
Yeah, like
I'm thinking about all the ways that this happened, how it could have happened, how hard do you have to push, how, you know.
And the conversation they have after she's trying to like figure out how hard would I have to push this knife to get into it, and like how would you kill me? Have you thought about it? And she has a pretty stellar plan for killing her husband.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's actually my next thing. Saxitoxin is absolutely a thing. It's a neurotoxic. It's a neurotoxin, and it's best known as paralytic shellfish toxin because most of the people who die from it eat it from or get it from eating contaminated shellfish.
Right.
So,
it's a terrifying thing.
Good plan. She has it planned out. She has a plan.
But that's messy. I don't think she's planned for the rest of it.
Right. She's planned to like how she's going to poison him.
Yeah. And then get rid of him. But chopping people up is a messy business.
Yeah, and she doesn't
You can't just
realize
act like he just like disappeared without people going into her apartment. So you're going to have to get all Dexter on that mess. And that's like a whole thing. So her plan is pretty awesome, but there are some pretty big holes in it.
Yeah, it's going to take a lot of trips with a thermos to get rid of an entire human man.
Yeah, and then how do you clean up for that without leaving a trace? And then then she's going to have to play Bernie for a while and act like he's still alive and just on vacation. And then before you know it, they're finding bits and pieces still left in the garbage disposal. I mean, it's just a matter of time.
Yep. And I love her husband's answer. I don't know, flatter you to death? I'm like, he's clearly not thought about it. And she clearly has. But their relationship is so, like, sweet that he can tell she's clearly thought about this and he is not concerned in the least.
No, not concerned in the least.
Not
he knows
at
her.
Yeah.
He knows her.
Yep. So Villanelle had 5 targeted intended murders over these 2 episodes, and at least 4 others that we see who are dead collaterally at Villanelle's hand. So surely they're all entirely fictional, right? All of these, I mean, that's not like how people kill people. Oh, no. TheSun.com had Shannon Power write an article, and she spoke to the BBC's security correspondent, Gordon Carrera, and Gordon made a kill list for the show's producers to make it seem more realistic. So he researched all kinds of grisly, gruesome, weird murders.
Oh, wow.
And made them a list for them to use, pick from when they're writing the episodes.
Oh,
so they used ones not only that were in the book, but others as well. And it's just a lot of different ways to kill people. That's the kill list.
Wow.
I desperately want to see the kill list.
I desperately do want to see it. I mean, wow.
Yeah. So there was the murder in the bathroom where Villanelle pretends to be an aspiring fragrance maker, and she speaks to a feminist icon person, very powerful woman named Carla, and ends up murdering her with the perfume, basically.
Yes, please, let's talk about this because I have so many questions.
Okay. Well, that was based on the real-life murder of Kim Jong-un's brother, Kim Jong-nam.
Oh, really?
That's what they did. That they had a couple of women rush up to him in an airport, and they sprayed him with something, and it turned out to be like a perfume is what they sprayed him with, and it was the VX nerve agent that's banned. And it was found in his face, his eyes, his blood, his urine, all over his clothing, all over his bag. And they really believe that of course, the Korean leader was behind.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's pretty sure of that. So,
yeah, but in this case, though, the perfume isn't just a nerve agent, right?
No.
It doesn't have a smell, really. I mean, it is a nerve agent. It is, but it makes her have an asthma attack.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Right.
So it was like overkill. But then, how does she spray it and put it there? And then Villanelle just picks it up, no gloves, nothing, and puts it in her pocket. And I'm like, you should wash your hands before you touch your face with that, because you're standing pretty close. And she sprayed it and then sniffed it. And then you pick it up. Like, doesn't that stuff spread? Like, what?
I don't know, but did you not notice that she stepped back?
Oh, she did step back. Yeah.
Yeah. So she sets it down, she steps back, and
with
when she
excitement
opens,
to cover it up.
Yeah, exactly. Like she's excited to have her scent smelled by Carla. But as soon as she opens it, she steps back. When she sprays it, she steps back even a little further.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she did. And then she walks up and just picks up the bottle. And I'm like, I'd have grabbed like a tissue at least. I don't know. We're touching that. I don't know.
I mean, that thought hadn't occurred to me at all. It had not occurred to me. She put the lid back on and off she goes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Very interesting. And then I wondered, how offended should somebody be if they were called a tiresome think bucket?
This was so funny.
Frank shouts that at Eve in the middle of a bar, a pub.
Yeah.
Calls her a tiresome think bucket. And I was like, is this really a term? What is this? How offended should I be? Metafilter.com had a whole thread about this. People talking about a think bucket. And somebody
really
said,
funny.
It's a joke meant to evoke a bucket that has too many thoughts. So it's all slopping around. Yeah. Which I was like, oh, yeah, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, an overthinker. Mm-hmm. But a very creative way of saying an overthinker who's always trying to, like, you know, get him to do stuff. And it's like, quit thinking about this. It's
very fashionable in the UK to invent funny insults. So they really thought that that's what this was. But a 1946 Railroad Union magazine had this to say, put that in your think bucket and slosh it around a bit. So it's not entirely unheard of, though it does sound like very, very 1946.
It kind of does, except and then they updated it with the tiresome think bucket, and not saying put it in your think bucket, but you are a think bucket. That's funny.
Yeah, you're sloshing around. All your thoughts are disorganized. It's maybe the opposite of a think tank.
Yes,
even.
Exactly.
Like a tank it's all, what is that?
Yes.
Contained.
I don't know. Yeah.
The thoughts are contained and organized, perhaps. And in a bucket, they just kind of slosh out and get other people dirty.
Yes.
All right, so psychology break.
Okay. What you got?
All right, so Villanelle has to consciously work to look like an average member of society. So she, in the very beginning of the very first episode, when we first see her, she has to mimic the smile of the worker in the ice cream shop to be able to get the response she wants from the little girl. She wants a smile from her. She has to work to get that smile and to mimic the man. She does it again. And I didn't catch this till like the third time around, that she's on the treadmill and she's running and she's listening to the radio, and the woman laughs on the radio and she copies it while she's on the treadmill. And then she goes on a walk with Sebastian and she laughs the same way, which I was like, oh, wow.
Yes. I did actually catch that. That was a part of the quirk I liked about her, was how she had to continually try these little things on and work at it and, you know, employ the, you know, false empathy kind of thing, you know, and it's really interesting because when she has the interview and they're trying to get her to break down and show emotion, and every time she doesn't, they're like, okay, good, we're good. And then when she has a moment where something real actually comes through, they're like, we're pulling you.
Yeah.
So it was the opposite of a normal assessment.
Right. They want her to be a psychopath, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
To have no feelings.
Yeah. But mimicry is super normal. Jeff Thompson talks about it in an article from Psychology Today. Mimicry and mirroring can be good or bad, and that it's often something that happens subconsciously. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That most people don't realize they're doing it, and it causes positive feelings usually. It makes you seem charismatic, persuasive. You can have a positive impact on somebody by mimicking them. It's also a way to manipulate people. If you're doing it consciously, you can manipulate people with it, which is what Villanelle is doing.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think she's manipulating people, but she's also having to continually learn skills that come naturally to other people. Mm-hmm. Right. And to remember to do that. Because she's sitting there eating that ice cream in the beginning and she's like, no affect at all. And then she realizes the little girl is like noticing the fact that she's somehow less than human. And she realizes, oh, if I don't fit in, I will stand out. And I just murdered someone. So she's, in order to continue to be incognito, she has to learn how to be normal.
Yeah. But then she can't help but...
Then she's antisocial.
Yeah, she can't help but reveal her antisocial side when she dumps the kid's ice cream in her lap. So much for not being noticed.
Exactly. But at least at that point, she seems antisocial instead of psychopathic. And so I guess you got to choose, but I don't know. I don't know. Because then I felt like, hey, see, there she smiled for real.
Right. Yes, exactly. She's capable of smiling for real.
Oh, totally.
Just for
the wrong reasons.
Not great reasons. So psychopaths lack empathy, fear, and remorse. And Villanelle is absolutely a psychopath, but she can fake it really well in a lot of cases. And in this article by Eric Dolan from Psy Post, psychopaths are better at appearing genuine when they pretend to be fearful or remorseful. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that basically they can almost do a better job than the average person of appearing fearful and remorseful.
Yeah, this is what makes them so charming. Mm-hmm. They are super charming because... if they're not in a break from reality. Now, most of the time when we talk about psychopaths, people immediately think of somebody who is actually delusional, having a break from reality. These are different things than psychopathy, right? And so in a psychopath, they can mimic empathy so well because they literally don't have to overcome any personal baggage with it. They actually are paying attention to you better than anyone else would be. And we kind of love that. This is why everybody loves Joe in you. Right. Because you have this love-hate relationship with the fact that he actually does know his victims so well. And if they're on his good side, there is nothing better than him. Because, like, if he is happy with you, he listens, he knows you, he knows how to love on you and to be empathetic and to build you up. And so that is why it's so hard, because then when the switch flips, the victim has to convince themselves that this person was lying to them the whole time isn't really that person. But it's hard because they've made an emotional connection. Right. It's hard.
And then there was this article, it's called The Mask of Sanity Revisited, Psychopathic Traits and Affect Mimicry. It was a journal article published in Evolutionary Psychological Science. And like almost every article that I found about mimicry and psychology referred to this particular article.
Yeah, they all cited it, huh?
They, like, all of them. So good job, Angela Book and Company, because they were the ones who did it. Now, they had an interesting question. Is it disorder or is it an evolutionary adaptation?
Both.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting. They said it's that psychopathy is associated with a fast life history strategy, and that psychopathy specifically represents an opportunistic and exploitive mating strategy. They tend to have short relationships with people, which makes total sense.
Right.
But they have a much higher incidence of one-night stands as well, because it's a gratification thing and not a connection thing usually.
Right.
Yeah. And they found that psychopaths have an increased risk of harming non-relatives rather than relatives. So, which I thought was really interesting. They're less likely to hurt somebody they're related to than someone they're not related to. And that they found that they're less likely to live with their relatives. And they think that might be an evolutionary imperative that these people are feeling. It's something within themselves that they don't want to live with their family members, because if they live with them, they're more likely to hurt them. And
that's an interesting take.
Yeah.
I will definitely have to go read this article, because
it's fascinating.
there are so many confounds that came into my mind as you're saying all of that. Like, there's so many things,
Right.
that could be attributed to. Sure, it could be a protective factor for the family members, but then you're ascribing empathy, that person that is built evolutionarily inside the mind. So we're talking about emotions, because emotions happen before they happen. So emotions are not the same thing as feelings. Feelings are how you feel about the emotions, or what you think about the emotions. So the emotion happens, right? But then you're saying you're ascribing a characteristic to somebody that we say by their very definition they don't have.
Right.
So if evolutionarily speaking, they do have it, then
it's
how, but on the other hand, if it's a protective factor for themselves, that's salient.
Yeah.
It's not about not wanting to harm family members for their sake, right? It's about not wanting to harm family members because the first rule of serial killing is don't kill in your home zone, because then it's traced back to you. So it's a protective factor. Always kill outside your home.
Right.
Don't drink the water where you
Right.
finish the cliche. And so it is protective for the psychopath to live alone, to be alone, to not, and also because to keep their activities more secretive, but also they're not going to harm somebody that could be connected to them so well, because self-preservation.
Well, and preserving their own genetics. If they murder their kids,
right,
then their kids can't then go on to have children that would further their family line.
Right, which is something that they would care about.
Right.
But like siblings, or parents, or cousins, or wives.
Yeah.
Although we have seen a lot of serial killers who had wives and families. And that's what makes it so, like BTK, like, let's talk about this guy.
Yeah.
This was, so I don't know, but like all things, you have to sometimes think about these things on a continuum of, or a dimensional approach, because it's not binary. You don't either have empathy or not. We all know people who could be a little bit more empathetic, but they're not like cold-hearted killers either, so even killers are on a continuum, but it's hard, because in psychology, the big thing we run up against is we diagnose the same way the medical community does, but it doesn't make any sense, because the signs and symptoms we ascribe are actually also diagnoses. So, you're depressed? Oh, well, that's a symptom for blah, blah, blah. Oh, really? You're having these things? Well, your diagnosis is you're depressed. Okay, so in one scenario, it was a sign and a symptom. In the other scenario, it was the diagnosis. Oh, you're psychopathic? Oh, you're a psychopath. Wait, what? That doesn't make any sense. You're never like, oh, I have a symptom of cancer, but that's a different thing from being diagnosed with cancer. That's not true. That's not how that works. In the medical community, we understand that a symptom isn't necessarily the same as a diagnosis.
Right.
Although there is a few overlapping things.
Right.
However, like migraines. Migraines can be a symptom in some conditions, but sometimes you're just diagnosed with migraines. So there is room for this. But
Right.
in psychology, we make this mistake a lot.
Yeah.
We have it's like so muddy. This is why nobody understands the definitions of them.
Right.
It's why it's so hard.
Well,
yeah.
and it's really difficult to understand from one person to another what's absolutely true and fitting for one group of people may not really actually be salient for other people.
Yeah. Yeah. The cultural aspects,
Yeah.
you know, what seems to be a lack of empathy in one culture is actually perfectly appropriate maybe in a different culture. Yeah.
Right.
That's hard. This is why it's such an unscience, you know, there's a lot of art and science all smashed together in the big think bucket.
That's right. Sloshing around. Sometimes it sloshes
over.
out and gets people dirty.
Yeah.
All right. So last thing for psychology break was Villanelle likes national anthems.
Why? I don't understand that either.
Which I'm like, national anthems by and large are not great.
No.
The JSTOR Daily Blog had an article by Matthew Wills, and he was talking about, there was a lady Karen Cirillo, who actually did a whole lot of research about national anthems and things. And basically she came up with, if there's a lot of control by the elites in a country when they're adopting a national anthem, they're going to choose basic musical codes. The national anthem is going to be simpler. And if the people have more socio-political control when the anthem is being adopted, it's going to be more complex.
Oh, hence the United States.
Yes. So
who has a super, super difficult national anthem.
Right. So the simpler the anthem, the more control the
more complex.
Well, no, the simpler the anthem, the more control people in political power.
Oh, right. I jumped ahead.
Yeah, they have more control.
Right.
If it's simple, and if they have less control, it's a lot more complicated.
Right.
So it was just kind of an interesting correlation that she found over and over.
That is really kind of weird.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I just went down like a whole rabbit trail.
Did you?
Yes.
I mean, there's research. I'll send you the article, and you can.
I went through a whole rabbit trail.
Research.
I went through a whole rabbit trail in my mind right there. That's not appropriate for this podcast. So we're gonna move on.
All right. So real life, MI5. Yeah, of course it's real. We've heard about it.
Yes.
That is basically the domestic counterintelligence agency in Britain. So they're looking at parliamentary democracy, economic interests, and doing counterterrorism and espionage within the UK.
Right. Homeland Security.
Yes, basically. So, and Eve's job is logistical within their Homeland Security framework. Mm-hmm. So MI6 is the Secret Intelligence Service.
CIA.
Yes, exactly. They're working with foreign threats to the UK. So, and by the way, they call it the SIS. It's commonly known as MI6, but they probably wouldn't have called it that. They would probably have called it the SIS.
Yeah.
The Secret Intelligence Service.
Right.
Internally. Right. But the existence of it wasn't officially acknowledged until 1994.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
They did a good job.
They did a really good job, like, especially since, there was like James Bond movies and stuff.
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
like they really held on to that.
Yeah.
That secret thing.
Yeah. They were like, nope, nothing to see here. So in real life, female assassins are much less common than their male counterparts, but they're very, very deadly. And the two most interesting ones I found are both in the East. So there was a woman named Shi Jianjiao, which means sword. And she vowed to avenge the death of her father. He was beheaded in 1925 by Sun Xuanfang. And revenge is best served cold, because 10 years after Xuanfang murdered her father, Jianjiao tracked him down at a Buddhist temple where he had retired, and she shot him in the head. And instead of running away, she ran out to the street and started confessing to everybody she saw on the street that she just killed Xuanfang. She even had leaflets printed so that she could hand them out to people saying, I just killed this man and here's why. And that was part of her plan, was to attract media attention and have people be sympathetic to the reason that she murdered him. And it was a very high profile case.
Interesting.
Yeah, and she was actually pardoned in 1936 because they deemed it was ethically justified because it was filial piety. She lived until 1979. I was like, good for her. Nice thinking through. And it's not often that you see premeditated murder work out for somebody.
No. But it was an assassination. She framed it as an assassination.
Yes.
That was justified.
Wild, right?
Wow. That is wild. That is some thinking right there.
Yeah.
I think Eve needs to take some notes.
Yes. And one more, Kim Hyun-wei blew up a South Korean airplane. It was a plane flying between Baghdad and Seoul, and she and another spy actually put the bomb on the plane in Abu Dhabi, but they were apprehended by security forces. Her companion that was helping her committed suicide by eating cyanide. Okay. They had like cyanide capsules, and she wasn't able to do it. And she was sentenced to death, but they pardoned her because they said that she'd been brainwashed by the North Korean government. She's still alive.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So she was a brainwashed North Korean assassin.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I believe that.
Right. I mean,
like I flat out am like, that's probably true.
Yeah, sounds about right.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. And that's all I have. And of course, the bridge material will all be on our social media. All right, so next time, we're going to talk about the fascinating, confusing, and oh-so-original movie from 2000, Memento, starring Guy Pearce and Carrie-Anne Moss. So
such a great movie, and it was a breakthrough film.
Yeah, I mean, well, you say that. It's actually been done before. The reverse chronology has been done before, but Memento is by far one of the most successful examples of this. And
That's true. I should be more specific. It's a breakthrough film for Chris Nolan. It's his first film.
Oh, yes.
It's his first feature. So, Chris Nolan, hello.
Talk about setting the bar high.
That was a huge deal. And this is why he can make whatever movie he wants to make, and he can mix it however he wants to mix it. And it doesn't matter that the sound is louder than the words. He is Chris Nolan.
Yeah, that's right. And we will appreciate the things he does. It's wholly crimey and wonderful. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on psychology around this movie, because I know you're thinking about it already.
Join us, watch it, and join us for the discussion next time.
Absolutely. And make sure that you rate and review, subscribe, do all the things, help us get found so that we can continue to make the show. We want to be found. Tell a friend, because it's way more fun when you listen with a friend. You can talk about it later. Boy, that Jackie show's so smart. Boy, Christy, I can't believe that she said that, whatever. And, we love to hear from you. So do hit us up.
Yep. We'll see you next time.
Until next time, be safe, be kind, and wash your hands.
Da, da, da.